Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. I hope everybody's having a great week so far. I don't know if where you're at, you've had a heat wave come through, but there has been a crazy heat wave in the Midwest. So we're all trying to stay cool over here. But speaking of staying cool, today we're going to talk about inflammation. So, many of you may have heard that inflammation plays a role in chronic illness, but maybe you're not too familiar with what it means or what it looks like. So, we're going to talk about that today. So, as you roll in, if you have any questions, let me know. Hey there, Rosie. Thank you for joining. Yeah, if you guys have any comments, but I want to get a feel. And if you're watching the replay, please participate as well because this will help me kind of tailor content, tailor these trainings on things that you guys have questions on, or things, if there's things that you're super clear on, then we definitely don't need to cover them. But these trainings are for you to learn, and it's information that I wish I had readily available and didn't have to read several books or, pay for information like this. So, put a 1 in the chat and just give me a feel, or if you're watching this in the replay, in the comments, if you're someone that has maybe heard of inflammation and you kind of have an idea, it's got a negative connotation, but you're not sure exactly what it is or how to reduce it. Food can help, but not really sure how. There's a lot of noise. If that's you, I was right there with you at one point. Put a 1 in the comments. Or maybe you're someone that has been trying to lower their inflammation for quite some time and you're doing a good job, but you want to know a little bit how to do a little bit more work around cooling that internal fire. Drop a 2 in the comments. I see you guys. Thank you. That's super helpful. So it looks like the big feel is it's kind of an abstract topic, right? A lot of the time, inflammation is what we can't see, but it does play a key role in nearly every chronic condition. And when we lower our inflammation, we can reduce our pain, eliminate symptoms, and our body can really stop trying to put fires out and it can begin to heal. And the amazing thing about this information is that it's universal, right? Inflammation, like I said, plays a role in nearly every chronic condition. So it doesn't matter what your diagnosis is or what you're going through, lowering inflammation is only going to help the body to continue to heal so you can thrive and recover and reduce your pain, which is pretty amazing. So, first and foremost, what is inflammation? So, inflammation is the body's natural response to something that is harmful or potentially harmful or foreign in the body. And there's two kinds. So there's acute inflammation and then there's chronic inflammation. So what are these? Acute inflammation is what essentially happens when we're injured, we get a cut, we have a bug or a virus or a sprain or a break. And this is where our immune system goes to that area and really gets started on healing. So when we get a laceration, we see the skin, it gets hot and red and swollen. We have a break, it's swollen. We've got all this fluid and white blood cells, everything rushing to that area to try to fix the problem. And it's uncomfortable for a little while, but then it goes away and our body heals. That's acute. Now we've got chronic inflammation, which is the bad inflammation, right? And this is what we want to reduce and keep under wraps when we're dealing with chronic conditions. And like I said, it's something that we often don't see. It can be silent for a very long time. We don't need to have this big, drawn out, painful, or visibly swollen response to be experiencing inflammation in the body. So this is inflammation is not limited to the things that I'm going to talk about right now, but just to give you some reference points for different diagnoses that inflammation plays a major role in. And like I said, it's not limited to just these, but just some examples. So migraine, when our blood vessels are inflamed, they dilate and they can cause irritation in the brain. There's also irritation and inflammation of the trigeminal nerve, which is a key nerve in migraine. And what they've also found is that pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are actually little molecules that are put out by your white blood cells when they're trying to fix something, those are actually elevated during migraine attacks. So they see that in laboratory settings measuring these inflammatory markers during an attack. Autoimmune conditions, which is huge among women, and unfortunately it's been really normalized, and we're told that the body is attacking itself, which is a whole nother conversation. But basically, a misguided immune system is being triggered by underlying factors like viruses, gut dysfunction, different toxins that we're exposed to. Molecular mimicry is often involved as well. And it triggers that inflammation and cytokine activity, and that constant bombardment of this inflammatory response is what is continuing to damage tissue and prevent our body from healing. A couple other ones: PCOS. Women with PCOS show elevated markers of systemic inflammation, and it also worsens insulin resistance, which is a key component of PCOS, but also leading into diabetes. So inflammation caused by dietary fat, ultra processed foods, chronic stress, poor sleep, these all lead to poor insulin signaling. The insulin can't function properly, thus the blood glucose can't get out of the blood and into the cells, and leading to that cascade of insulin resistance and development of diabetes. Other conditions: Crohn's, colitis, digestive disorders, cancers, all of these things have high levels of inflammatory markers, and it's causing DNA damage, tumor initiation, so on and so forth. So hopefully, raise your hand, give me a thumbs up if this is helpful for you, so you can actually see, these slow moving, gradually increasing inflammatory responses are really behind chronic disease and how we can help ourselves. So moving right along, so what causes inflammation? We know it plays a role. We now know what it is, but what is actually causing it? And there are so many things that can cause inflammation. So we're going to go into what causes it, but also afterward, what can help reduce inflammation and how can we move forward. So I really want you to get some benefit out of our conversation today. That way you can take actionable steps to help heal your body. That's what we're here for, right? We want to reduce our pain. We want to get off medications. We want our body to heal. So we don't just want what's wrong. We want to know how we can help it, right? Okay. So some of the big things that cause inflammation are everyday exposures, right? And there are some things that we can control and some things that we can't control. So there's different things like pesticides, heavy metals in food products, and different medical treatments, plastics, microplastics. There's endocrine disruptors like fragrances, chemicals in cleaning products, and all of these things. So like I said, some of it we cannot avoid, some of it we can, and that's just something that we have to learn to live with. So we just make the conscious choices that we can, and we'll talk a little bit about what we can do to kind of avoid some of those external factors. But another thing that causes inflammation, which is huge, and this is something that I focus on in the Vitality program, is immune system health, right? This whole thing is immune related. But there are underlying pathogens that trigger inflammation because the body is constantly trying to deal with these pathogens and keep them at bay. A lot of the time we think that, okay, well, pathogens, we're not, if we're sick, we're sick, and if not, we're healthy. But what we don't realize is that different viruses and bacteria, bacterial infections that we're exposed to over the course of our lifetime often stay with us. So if we've got a bout of food poisoning, these bacteria can stay with us. They can cause further gut dysbiosis. We have more bacterial DNA in our body than we have of human DNA, which is crazy. So when things kind of get out of whack, we've got bacterial strains that are very helpful for us. And we've also got bacterial strains that are pathogenic or harmful for us. So when those get out of balance and the pathogenic bacteria start producing byproducts that trigger our immune response, we don't need to have strep throat or a sinus infection or something like that to have an active infection. It's kind of underlying, it's quiet, slow moving, but always there, and the immune system is constantly activated, trying to keep everything at bay. Likewise, there are also a viral component. So, just like bacteria, viruses that we encounter tend to stay with us. And science is uncovering more and more each year as time goes on. But big ones like Epstein-Barr virus, the herpetic viruses, the HPV, we're finding that these viruses actually lead to conditions and cancer. We've recently discovered in the past couple of years that ABV is the cause of multiple sclerosis. So we have these in our system, and for instance, Epstein-Barr virus can actually lay dormant for very long periods of time. And it comes out when we're stressed or our immune system's down. Pregnancy is a huge thing with women, when our immune system is knocked down because our body is focused on reproduction rather than, the immune system. And also you don't want to reject that baby that's growing in you, right? So we want the immune system down a little bit so everything moves along accordingly. But if you've noticed, a lot of women have developed conditions after pregnancy, and it's often related to hormonal shifts or aging. But what I might offer to you is that it's really our immune system that's being knocked down during these times of physical burden or emotional stress, which then allows pathogens to come out of dormancy. And you don't need to have, a runny nose and a fever and all of that. But what happens is these conditions developed because of underlying infections. So there's a whole path that we can go down as far as pathogens and the conditions that they actually cause, but it's something to keep in mind because it's something that's often overlooked. So we want to make sure that we're keeping our immune system nice and strong so it can keep those underlying infections at bay, right? We don't want it to become a runaway train where the viral load becomes really high, it starts damaging DNA, so on and so forth. So those are a couple main components. What else can cause increased inflammation? So getting poor sleep, not prioritizing sleep. This shows elevated CRP in people that don't get enough sleep, and that's a primary inflammatory marker. Chronic stress and a dysregulated nervous system. So we live in a world where we are constantly doing something, and I am guilty of this as well. I feel like I am not doing enough if I'm not multitasking. And that's something that I'm actively working on because nervous system regulation, especially for me, and dealing with chronic pain and multiple conditions with chronic pain involved, keeping the nervous system regulated is incredibly important. But it's something that takes a lot of work, but it can be done. But keeping the nervous system regulated, and we're constantly getting pulled with alerts and to-do lists and things we need to get done and time crunches, and it's one of those things where we really need to take a step back and notice. And I notice in particular when I feel like I don't have the time to stop and take a few moments to deep breathe or to do a meditation, that's when I need it the most. That's when my body is upregulated and I need to take a step back and get it back into a regulated state and get it out of fight or flight. So chronic stress, having cortisol levels elevated, this is all going to lead to inflammation. There are other things, and this may be a little woo-woo, but more and more is being seen about unhealed trauma. So things that we experience throughout our lives, the body actually holds on to that and we can store that. That's why, some people years later, they will have a breakdown in a positive way or sometimes a negative way about things that happened decades ago, because the body never really forgets. And what I think is really interesting, this is a little sidebar, but as women, we are in our mother and our grandmother at the same time. So our grandmother, when she's pregnant with our mother, her eggs, our mother's eggs, are fully developed inside the fetus, inside our grandmother, which is crazy. So even generational traumas, things can be passed down, stress in the body, that tension, that inflammation. So it's super interesting. It's a realm that I've not taken a complete dive into, but it's worth noting that unresolved trauma can definitely play a role in inflammation, as well as generational traumas and such. So super cool. I'm going to take a quick sip of water before we get into the next topic, because the next topic's a doozy. So, food. All of these other things definitely play a role, but for me personally, I think food is one of the biggest factors in inflammation on a day-to-day basis, but it's also one that is very easy to regulate. And sometimes we look at, the things that we eat and we have a tough time when we want to stick to a certain nutrition plan. But it really can be simple. So, and that's part of what I want to help you do, is getting back to a relationship with food that is simple, that is easy, that makes sense. It's common sense. We've turned nutrition into rocket science. Humans are so very intelligent, but we're so confused about what to eat. And we're eating a lot of things that are food-like substances that aren't food, that are made in a lab. So things that can cause inflammation are, the processed foods, refined sugar, diets that are heavy on oil, artificial additives, all of these things that our body doesn't really know what to do with. If it's not found in nature, it doesn't really know how to process it. And we sometimes take our bodies for granted, right? We think that it can kind of just do everything. Raise your hand if that's you. Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the chat, because it was certainly me. I treated my body like a garbage can for a very long time. And then the chronic pain crept in, and it was a little bit by little until I realized, how the heck did I get here? And I have 8 different chronic diagnoses, right? So other foods that are high in saturated fats, as well as arachidonic acid. So what is arachidonic acid? I recently did a post on this on Instagram, not on arachidonic acid, but some common healthy, trendy foods that are really causing inflammation. And The problem with it is that there's so much noise around food, and people are very adamant about what to eat and what works. Part of the problem is we've got a lot of people that have never been sick, or maybe they've had one condition that they've needed to reverse and they've been successful at it, and they're sharing information based on what they think works. And that's all fine and good. And I'm also not here to condemn any foods, but foods high in saturated fat and arachidonic acid, like dairy, eggs, red meat, these things are all highly inflammatory. Organ meats, eggs are one of the primary sources of arachidonic acid in the American diet. So, like I said, what is arachidonic acid? It is actually a pro-inflammatory omega-6 fatty acid. And what happens is we need to have a ratio of omega-6s to omega-1s that are between 1-to-1 and 4-to-1. So, for instance, a 1-to-1 ratio would be amazing, or a 1-to-1 or a 1-to-2 would mean, or a 2-to-1 rather, would be 2 parts omega-6 and 1 part omega-3 fatty acid. When you get up to those higher numbers where you've got 10, 20, 30 parts omega-6 fatty acid to 1 part omega-3 fatty acid, these are the body is constantly being presented with inflammatory omega-6s. Okay? So what happens is the body can no longer catch up and heal. It's putting out fires because the body will always favor, for what reason, to be frank, I'm not sure, but the inflammatory process, the omega-6 process, that pathway is what will predominate if the ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s is too high. So we want to get higher omega-3s and lower omega-6s. So I'm not saying don't eat these foods ever. If you're perfectly healthy, there's nothing you're looking to reverse or prevent, there's nothing wrong with these foods. They can be nutritious, very nutritious, and that's often the argument, is saying, hey, well, these foods have all these nutrients in it, and it's like, yes, they do, but it doesn't mean that they're not causing inflammation. And these are things that we can measure. So it's just one of those things that we want to keep an eye on, and maybe it's something that you have as a treat. But if we're having these things every day, the ultra processed foods, the foods high in saturated fat and arachidonic acid, then our bodies are continuously having that low grade inflammation, and instead of healing, it's just putting out fires. And again, we want to support our body on its healing journey. So what are some things that we can do to support healing, to lower inflammation? So the most powerful medicine that we have is on the end of our forks, right? It's the one thing that we can choose every day, multiple times a day, that can help us move the needle, which is super amazing. So things that we want to crowd in, and I want to focus on abundance, not restriction, because oftentimes when we're on this journey, we're going on elimination diets, and I can't have this and my body doesn't like that, and we really end up in a place where we're like, well, what the hell can I eat, right? No, we don't want to come from a place of lack or restriction. What we really want to do is think of all of the things, all of the beautiful, delicious foods that we can have that are going to serve our body. And how can we work on our mindset? Our mindset is huge. It's one of the pillars of the Vitality program. If we're sitting there thinking that we can't have, we're going to be miserable, right? I don't want you to be miserable. I don't want me to be miserable. What can we have? What can we make that is delicious? So what do you really love? Those vibrantly colored fruits and vegetables. There's a lot of fruit fear People are even fearing vegetables now. It's super ridiculous. They are so high in vitamins and minerals and fiber. Um, Fiber helps move out a lot of the inflammatory compounds. It helps to get rid of heavy metals. It helps to get rid of excess hormones. It helps to move things through our system. Brightly colored foods are going to have the most vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. And antioxidants, which are not found in these trendy health foods, are what are really going to move the needle to help to lower your inflammation. So anything brightly colored is going to have antioxidants in it. And the more brightly colored foods you have, really eating the rainbow, that's going to get you different antioxidants. That's really going to help your body. And it's super interesting. It's really cool because humans are designed biologically to be attracted to bright colors and to be attracted to sweet smells. So most of these foods that have high antioxidant levels are going to be ripe, fresh, delicious fruits. Okay. If you're diabetic, I'm going to be doing some trainings in the future on diabetes and insulin resistance, but there's so much information out there about the role of dietary fat in the development of insulin resistance. So that's something I really want to talk about. But there's where a lot of fear of sugar comes in, and we just definitely don't want to equate sugar from a cupcake to sugar from a banana or some blueberries or an apple, because these foods are packed with vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants that are going to help nourish our body and fight inflammation. And at the end of the day, that's what we want to do. Our leafy greens are going to have, the vitamins and minerals and the chlorophyll. Some amazing things to to implement daily are ginger and turmeric, whether that be in supplement form or making a ginger dressing of sorts or adding it to a smoothie, something like that. Ginger and turmeric are amazing at lowering inflammation. For migraine specifically, 1,000 milligrams or 1 gram of ginger has been shown to be as effective as 100 milligrams of sumatriptan in reducing a migraine attack. So these foods are very powerful. They're super helpful. Garlic and onions are antiviral, antibacterial, help support the liver, really help to lower inflammation. And chia and flax seeds, these are going to be high in your omega-3s. And hemp seeds, to some extent, they are still higher in omega-6s. So if you want to focus on those omega-3 fatty acids, getting the chia seeds in particularly, especially if you're grinding them up first so they're all opened up before you ingest them, super, super helpful. I do try to keep fats after the afternoon. That way, the fats aren't weighing down the liver in the morning, even healthy fats. That's just my personal take on things. I like things that are light, that are going to help give me energy throughout the day and support my liver. But you can absolutely add some chia seeds to a smoothie in the morning or afternoon if that's something that you like, or do a chia pudding, something like that. Let's see here. We talked about food, definitely lifestyle. Sleep and making sure we're getting enough sleep. And I know this can be hard because we feel like there's just not enough time in the day, or maybe you've got kids and when you wake up, you've got to get the kids ready. So for me, it's, and at night, my husband and I watch a television show that we like together. And sometimes we stay up a little bit too late when we could be getting some extra rest, but making sure we're getting the rest that our body needs as close to 7 to 9 hours as physically possible. Regulating our nervous systems, taking the time to breathe when we're stressed. Because if we are constantly in fight or flight, we cannot be in rest and digest. It's one or the other. One of the easiest ways to take yourself out of fight or flight is to use the breath. It is literally the bridge between those two branches of the or activities of the nervous system. So taking the time, doing box breathing, or doing a 4 count of inhale and a 6 or 8 count exhale, that helps to bring you back in. When we're eating, we're trying as hard as possible to not eat on the go, but also like really chewing our food, taking a moment to be mindful. Movement, making sure we're getting some of that release in, but also along the same lines with movement, we're often prided, when we do like super intense, heavy workouts. And sometimes that feels amazing. Some of us become addicted to it. We really love those intense workouts. What I might offer here is if you're working to heal something, maybe try implementing things that aren't as intense, because those intense workouts can constantly trigger inflammation. And like I said, that's something that we want to cool. So maybe if it's something that you do an intense workout 4 days a week, maybe you do it 2, or maybe you do it 3, and maybe swap it out for something that's more gentle, maybe a walk, stretching, really honoring your body and where you're at in the healing journey is something that's really important. But at the same token, if not getting that intense workout in is going to cause you stress, then maybe, just find some balance and maybe shorter intervals, or a shorter workout and you balance it with stretching or deep breathing, something like that. So it's really just doing what you can when you can, and meeting yourself where you're at, and having compassion with your body, and realizing we can't control all these things. Which actually brings me back to some of the environmental factors, really looking at what we're exposed to. And the biggest place that we have control over is our home, right? So we can look at our personal care products. We can look at our cleaning products. Fragrances are a big one. I used to make candles and I didn't realize, what a negative impact fragrance has on the body and the endocrine system and the liver and the nervous system. So that is a huge one, and it's a super simple one to eliminate. And once you eliminate it, then you realize how nose blind you were to it, and you're much more cognizant of fragrances moving forward. But there's an app called Yuka, Y-U-K-A, and it's super affordable annually. So you can scan products and really look at the things that you have in your life, in your home. I think I have not used the Bobby Approved app. I've heard that you can do more than food with that, which is super cool, and I've also heard that it's free, but I have not used that. I've only used the Yuka app, and I have paid for that, so it's just what I use and I love. So yeah, I hope that those are some helpful takeaways as far as how you can effectively start lowering your inflammation. I hope it clears out some of the noise and really gives you some insight as to some things that you may not have heard of or recognized or realized could be causing inflammation. For me, I didn't realize that the viral and bacterial issue could be causing inflammation until I had lab work done. And I realized how sky high my antibodies were, especially for EBV. I had never had mono, was never diagnosed. My antibodies are sky high. And it's really tough to diagnose an active infection, but when you have sky high antibodies like that, your immune system's in overdrive. So that was really enlightening to me, and that's, one of the main reasons, I work on immune system health, especially for myself right now. But in any event, if you have any questions about this, please let me know. There's always the opportunity to hop on a call and we can kind of look at what you're going through and see if it would make sense to partner together. You can check the links out, or, vitalityholistichw.com. You can book a free call there. But if you have any questions specifically related to this training, please drop them in the comments below. If you want another training on inflammation kind of to expand on this, please let me know. But the body was designed to heal, and we can support it by removing the things that are causing inflammation and introducing things that are going to help us lower inflammation. So again, hopefully that was super helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a great weekend, guys.